The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
How are you, sir?
This is Peter.
Oh.
I can't believe I'm talking to you, Dr. Ray the Great.
Well, I don't know about that.
I love listening to you. You have a personality just like my father.
I don't think you should feel helpless. You are helpless.
Doctor, I really appreciate that. That makes me feel a lot better.
You be at peace, or else I'm going to yell at you.
Trying to find a reason to speak to you. I think you're the best thing since sliced bread.
That Ray, he's something.
Thank you so much for what you're doing for all the parents out there.
I don't know what I can possibly do.
I don't either.
I'm getting my money worth, I think, at this phone call.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Psychologist, father of 10, and my children's orthodontist's summer home payments. I have several kids who got braces. So what I did was no birthday or Christmas presents until those braces were paid off. And then sometimes I reused them. I said, okay, we got a younger brother. Let's see if we can use those for him. All right, come on. I shouldn't have to say that's not true. Good to have you here on The Doctor Is In on this Look Back Friday. We've got a number of questions up there, calls that people came in with. In previous shows, looking back, it was probably a couple months ago on some of these, and I decided that there was more to say. There's always more to say. It's not therapy here. You could explore an awful lot of everything that people call in about. So that's why I'm very careful just to simply offer some thoughts, some options, rather than doing therapy over the phone here. So we'll get to those calls momentarily. My older children went to preschool. Yeah, we were kind of into the preschool thing, you know, the fun, the little plays that they do. And I remember one time saying to my wife, this sounds kind of coarse. I said, you know, honey, I think the only thing more boring than watching your kids sing 9 Christmas songs in a row is watching somebody else's kid sing 9 Christmas songs in a row. Okay, well, we went. I enjoyed those things. But there was a time, a couple of my older kids, when the preschool teacher said that one of their philosophies, I think they were doing this under some kind of meet the parents group. They said, we do not have the children say please or thank you or I'm sorry. And reflecting what a lot of quote-unquote experts, how did we ever raise children without so many experts, also say is that if you make a child, if you require a child, if you force a child to say I'm sorry, and they don't want to, they certainly don't feel like it, they feel aggrieved that they didn't do anything wrong. You are being, in essence, psychologically inappropriate. I'm sorry without the requisite remorse is empty words. That's all it is. It's empty words. We want the child to experience legitimate remorse so that when they say I'm sorry, or when they say thank you, it's filled with gratitude or it's filled with the concomitant remorse. This is part of the philosophy that keeps a lot of people from acting like Christians. When they say, well, I'd like to treat her nice, but I don't want to be disingenuine. I don't feel like it. I don't want to, and I just don't want to go against. I don't want to fake it. Well, yes, I think it's good to fake it sometimes. It's very good to fake it sometimes. You are called to do good things, even if it's as little as saying please and thank you, when you don't feel like it? Since when did feeling like it become the guiding principle? We used to do things because it was good and right. So having a little 3-year-old say, I'm sorry after he spits at someone, he doesn't experience remorse. Why would he? He's 3. He doesn't even know, for the most part, what the sorry is supposed to indicate. What you're doing is you're putting in place a habit. Millennia ago, the philosophers said, form the habit first. The feelings and the virtue will follow. At some point, the child is going to slowly, developmentally mature into understanding better and better the reason behind a good I'm sorry, or the reason behind a please and a thank you when you don't feel like saying thank you because you're gonna tell Aunt Elma thank you for these bunny pajamas. I'm 8 years old. I don't feel no thanks whatsoever regarding these bunny pajamas. But thank you is an indication that she went out and she did this. You don't have to wear the bunny pajamas, but you thank her for the gift. I don't feel like it. I don't want the gift. That's irrelevant. Thank you is proper. And without forming the habit, with somehow waiting in the abstract for the feeling to be legit. So let's say when he's 9 and he's developmentally more capable of understanding what I'm sorry is supposed to represent, but he hasn't said it. He's never said I'm sorry for the past 6 years. So now are we going to say, well, good. Now he's in a position to start saying I'm sorry and knowing what it means. In one of my books, I talk about the authentic self. I say that self is such a priority word in psychology. And that's an irony, too, because for Christians, the self is not to be anywhere near our main focus. Others is to be our main focus. But the authentic self is a ruler. It basically says you don't do anything that you don't actually desire to do, especially in the realm of social interaction. My authentic self says, I don't want to go to a nursing home. Why? Well, I'm uncomfortable there, and there's urine smells, and my great aunt is confused, and she doesn't even know who I am half the time. So my authentic self would say, just don't go. Well, I better do well to ignore my authentic self. My authentic self is misguiding me. It is leading me to choose behaviors that are unchristian. As long as I put myself ahead of doing charitable things, there's a whole lot of charitable things I'm not going to do, which our Lord would want me to do. I was in prison and you visited me. I was sick. You visited me. I was in need. My authentic self says, that's not me. I'll get that in marriages. I get that in marriage counseling. The wife might say, well, I sure would like him to be more affectionate. And the guy might say, well, that's not me. You know that. You know I'm just not an affectionate person. And there's a part of me that wants to say, so what? So what? If you know this is important to your wife, if you know this would help your marriage, then you show some expression of affection, whether you feel like it or whether you don't. Many times, in otherwise pretty healthy marriages, the wife might say, I'm not interested in physical relationships whatsoever with my husband. Physical relations with my husband. I'm not interested. I don't feel like it. Well, it would do well for the marriage if, in fact, as St. John Paul II has talked about, that she make herself available. Well, I don't want to. Well, of course you don't want to. That's why you haven't had relations in 9 months. Do not let this idea that I have to have the requisite feelings for an action to be genuine and legitimate. The action is genuine and legitimate if it is motivated by the right thing to do. The feelings are nowhere near as important as doing the right and good thing. Got some questions from the past when we come back.
We'll return after these messages.
Trained to read minds, able to read them across vast distances, over mountain ranges, across lakes, smaller lakes, not necessarily the Great Lakes. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. This is Look Back Friday. Let me take a look at what the questions are coming up. This one is from Kay. She, in her grandchild Catholic school class, is a youngster who is claiming to be transgender. Tell me about this first grade class.
I have a granddaughter in first grade at a small Catholic school. It's a small class. She has a transgender student in the class, born a boy but being raised as a girl, and been in the class for a couple of years, preschool through first grade already. I have two questions. First of all, is it okay, in your opinion, to allow this in a Catholic school since it goes against Catholic teaching? But more importantly, will the trans child confuse my granddaughter and other students on normal transgender development ideas?
Now, when you say transgender, are they? You obviously may not know this, but would there be hormones given, puberty blocker hormones to this little one, or no, it's just dressing as a girl?
I don't know that. Okay. It's more dressing as a girl, uses the boys' bathroom, but always, wears pink and lots of jewelry and lots of girly shoes, book bags, accessories, all that kind of thing.
Does the teacher address him as a boy or girl?
I don't know. He goes by his given name, but I did look it up, and that could be a boy or a girl name. I don't really want to give the name.
Yeah, I understand. Well, first of all, certainly the school, if they were to act in parallel to church teachings, may be able to make a case that this isn't permitted in the school. Now, it doesn't shock me that the school is saying, well, we're going to respect what these parents want. We're going to respect what this 7-year-old wants. Doesn't shock me, even if it is going against church teaching and it is confusing. That said, will it confuse the other kids? Yep, it will. So the degree that the confusion can be mitigated depends upon what the parents talk about with the other kids. It's perplexing that you got somebody that's 7 years old and is being raised opposite sex already. It is definitely perplexing. I can't comment on exactly what that school is thinking or what that teacher is thinking or being forced to think. I would have your granddaughter's parents ask her what she thinks about this. Now, she's going to be confused. She's going to say, I don't understand. He's a boy. Why is he doing this? Okay? They can explain to her as best they can on her level. Well, honey, I don't really know why this is happening, but his parents must think that he wants to be a girl, and they're going to let him be a girl.
I also would like to add something else. My granddaughter came home from school one day, and I'm sure this wasn't taught in the class, but she told her parents, boys can marry boys and girls can marry girls. And, of course, this alarms the parents a lot and said, no, they can't. But, she came home with that notion and told, that affirmation.
Well, that tells you something. I personally, if that's the kind of things that's being taught in this elementary Catholic school, personally...
No, I'm sorry. We don't believe it was taught. We think it came from the child.
Oh, okay. Well, then there is one more component of that child confusing her. And apparently, she didn't say, that's not true. She said, oh, okay. So, yeah, there is confusion probably going on. I don't know. I mean, your son and daughter could go to the school, they can go to the principal, they can go to the priest and say, okay, what are you doing here? How are you handling this? What's your approach to this? And if they say, well, we just don't believe it's in our right to do anything like this, then I would probably say, well, then where would you draw a limit? Where would he be allowed to come in? What if he says, I just like being naked? I want to come in naked. Would you allow that? What if he says, I want to use the girls' bathroom? Would you allow that? What would you allow in the name of self-expression? I would like some answers.
Good point.
So, okay, it's just too bad that these little kids have to try to assimilate this kind of confusion. I think it's safe to say that the younger the child, who clearly wants to change their gender perspective, has to have heavy parental or otherwise adult-like support and cooperation. It's not unusual for little kids at all to have confusion about whether they're a boy or a girl. That's not unusual at all. And it's usually transient. And by and large, the surveys have shown that even among teens, by late adolescence, late teenhood, about 90-some% of them return to their birth sex in their self-image. But what can happen is that when you have authoritative people around them, and this includes parents, I got a email not too long ago from someone who said it was either she or someone she knows who has 4 children who are trans. Now, just by the statistics alone, anything like that would be innate to their identity or gender confusion would be suspect. There obviously are social factors. What else they might be? Are there social media factors? Are there internet factors? Peer factors? What's going on? Celebrity? There's a very, very high percentage, higher than the normal population among Hollywood celebrities, who claim to have offspring who are trans. And until we get to the point where we start looking into this and saying, okay, what could be the factors involved here? But see, right now, that's a little off limits. Not allowed to do that. If this little kid at age 5 said, I want to be a girl, and the adults around him said, okay, good for you, let's go, let's help you do that, let's help you on your journey to girlhood, then you wouldn't be shocked that that's what's happening. But the interesting thing about this is that this is confusing to little kids. They don't understand this. My children, the first couple of older kids, went to Catholic school. And they were coming home with some very sexualized stuff. Very sadly sexualized stuff. Not from the school, but from the peers. At that point, my wife, who had always wanted to homeschool, and I was slow to the train, said, go for it, honey. Because I wanted my children to stay innocent at age 6 and 7. I didn't want them coming home with the kinds of things that they were hearing from their peers. It was sleazy stuff. There's no way I could even say it on this program. So in fact, we homeschooled, and that was one of the reasons, which is I wanted to keep their innocence longer. And fortunately, we were able to homeschool, and it did keep their innocence. Within a year, my son was back to being a little 7-year-old again. I will share with you something very interesting. She used to drop him off at school, and he was in 2nd grade, and his sister was in 1st, and he had to make sure that she walked way behind him because he didn't want to be seen with his sister tagging along, and Mom had to drop him off and just kind of blow him a kiss because he was a little self-conscious about his mom holding his hand. That completely disappeared. Within 6 months after being homeschooled, his sister was his best buddy. He wasn't ashamed of his sister. His mother held his hand all the time, and he liked it a lot. It disappeared because he was being shaped by the attitudes of some of the kids. And if you've got this child who is confused about his gender identity, which, and again, I don't know how confused he is. I have no way of knowing. But I certainly would speculate that the adults around him, are involved in this. So, given that, I would do everything I can to teach this little granddaughter, honey, sometimes kids get confused about whether they're a boy or a girl, but even though they're a boy, they think they're a girl, and that can happen a little bit. And maybe as he gets older, he'll decide, wait, I really am a boy. Little kids shouldn't have to struggle with that stuff. Comfortable with psychobabble. I can't go with that. So don't let me hear where you're coming from. Nice to have you here on The Doctor's In on this Look Back Friday. What do we got there? Let's talk to Colton from Washington. He's got some fears. He's got some fears about the future.
So my question is for down the road in a decade or so. I'm marrying my wonderful fiance next month, and her mom is expecting us to welcome her into our home and take care of her when she can no longer. So this will be an extra responsibility, especially for my fiance. And I have concerns if she will respect the guidelines of our home. My fiance is hesitant, but not as much as me. So with your experience, what are the Christian duties for taking care of an elderly parent?
Let's look at the practicalities here, Colton. How old is her mom?
Right now, she's 65 and in good health. So as far as I see, this is, a decade or more down the line.
At least. Could be two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The question becomes, what does it mean for her to not be able to care for herself? In other words, if she's saying, when I become debilitated, when I become mentally so deteriorated that I can't function, that's when I expect you to take care of me. Or is she saying, nah, if I just decide I don't want to live alone anymore, I'm going to come to your place? Which is she saying?
No, it's when she's debilitated. Yeah, she likes to be as active and wants to do as much on her own.
So she's going to want to stay at her house as long as possible.
Yes.
True. Okay, so that's good, because what that means is it will get to a point where she's no longer able to live independently. Now, if it comes to that, the decision is, are you able to keep her at your place? Or would she have to go into assisted living or even perhaps memory care if she's that far down? So what I'm saying is, it isn't automatic that she's going to become emotionally or mentally debilitated, and therefore you got to bring her into your house because you may not be able to supervise her if you both work. She may be too fragile to be in your home. She could fall. She may wander off. When we watched my mother-in-law for 3 years, she wandered off. So we got to the point where we couldn't maintain her anymore. We had to place her in a nursing home. Of course, some of the family members did not like that at all. They were thinking we should have persevered, but we couldn't. It was dangerous. So there's several things here. One, I wouldn't worry about it because, first of all, it's probably 10 or 20 years away. Secondly, the majority of people don't go through mental deterioration. All right, still a smaller percentage of those who lose their mental faculties as they move into their 80s. It's not the majority. Okay, so that's 2. 3, even if she gets to the point where she cannot live independently, and I'm going to believe she'll cling to that as long as she can, at that point you may have to make a decision, which is, can she stay here or does she need more supervision? And here's the other thing to consider. If it gets to the point where she cannot live independently anymore because she's fragile, she's mentally confused, even if she comes to be with you, it will probably be short term.
Okay.
Thanks
for easing some of my concerns.
Oh, yeah, that's not something I would even think about.
Okay.
That's something that if and when it shows up, that you then make the decisions. We did that with my mother-in-law. She couldn't live alone. She just couldn't. She got to the point where, forget it, she was wandering off. We had to debilitate her car. So we said, okay, Mom can come with us. And then it just got to the point where we couldn't even handle Mom.
Yeah, and my fiance's mom, she said her nightmare is going to a nursing home. So
right, and she'll
not want that to happen.
Right, and she'll fight it every step of the way until she's to the point where flat out she'll probably have to be placed. But again, most of the time that doesn't happen. And it's not unusual for someone to resist strongly going to be placed anywhere. And part of the problem is if there is cognitive deterioration, then they lose the ability to judge reasonably whether they should be placed in a more supervised setting. In their mind, they're still very capable of independent living. And that is sometimes a most common and family fracturing decision that has to be made. It's thrust upon you. But the bigger issue here for Colton is a what if. He's creating a scenario that may or may not happen, and in fact is probably less likely to happen. But in his mind, he's saying, well, it could happen, and therefore I have to be stressed about it. That's a what if. It's a classic what if. What if we have to take my mother-in-law in 12 years from now? Well, first of all, a what if is generally a concoction. It's usually something that's unlikely to happen. It is usually something that we think that if it were to happen, it would be overwhelming. Well, in fact, if he would have to take his mother-in-law in for some short period of time, they'd probably be surprised that they would adjust to it for that period of time. My mother-in-law was with us when we still had several other kids at home. And we adjusted. 3 of my boys slept on the floor because Mom needed a bedroom. And we only had 2 other bedrooms for the kids. So we made the adjustments. The boys did. But my wife and I made adjustments on supervising Mom. Usually we had to have somebody home or someone there to supervise. So it's a what if. And what ifs can create an awful lot of unnecessary speculative anxiety. Odds are it's not going to happen. And even if it were to happen, again, if she is to the point where she can't live independently, then living with Colton and his wife would probably be also a situation where it would be only a short matter of time before they couldn't handle her either. And you got to figure, too, they're going to have kids there, God willing. So if this is 17 years from now, they could easily have older kids. Yeah, this is not something. It's not something I would worry about at all at this point. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In on this Look Back Friday. My website is drray.com. Instagram and Facebook are also there. I had to be dragged kicking and screaming to those platforms. But I was convinced that it would be a way to reach more people, especially the younger people. I don't generally put up the fact that I ate my bologna sandwich in the shape of a giraffe. Not cool. All right, let's see what we got in the lineup. Let's go to Stephen, who has an adult daughter, who's accusing him of a very common accusation. So what are you doing that's so controlling with this 22-year-old?
We do talk to her a lot. She's in college by herself, not by herself, but with friends. So the big thing is probably we text her or something, or she tells us maybe, I don't know, she's not feeling well or something's weird, and we text her, how you doing, and she won't respond. So on a couple of occasions, I've gone as far as call her. She didn't answer her phone. I called her at work or something, or call her where she's at, and she's embarrassed. She said, "Why are you checking up on me? You're trying to control my life and all this stuff." So that's, I know she's trying to, become a woman, and I get that, and that's fine. We want her to. She's out of state, so she has a lot of freedom. But I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to find out is, are we really being over controlling, or we're just trying to protect our daughter in our mind?
You pay for her college?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, I see. Uh-huh.
Right.
Hey, Dad, I want to be independent. Oh, keep the money coming. Yeah. I think I personally would. Okay, the question you ask is this. Are we being controlling? Now, given what you said, it doesn't sound like it at all. You're not saying, all right, let's see, what could I pick out here as something that would be controlling?
Well,
okay. Okay.
We did have you're familiar with the 360 app where you can see where they're at all the time?
Yeah.
So we had that for a while with her, especially when she was down there, and we told her we're not checking up on you. We just make sure if something happens, we know where you were or where you're at. But we took that off. We thought, yeah, maybe that is a little bit controlling. But
I don't think so. I don't think so.
No.
See, here's the question you're asking, Stephen. You're basically saying, is there an objective measure, in this case, with a 22-year-old daughter whom you're paying for out of state, is there an objective measure of control? How would you define control? A lot of it comes down to what the parent thinks is wise and loving. If you say, nope, I don't care what you think, I want the 360 app. I want to know where you're at and what's going on, and then that's the way it is. Now, somebody could say, well, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? You say, yeah, I think you could think it's ridiculous. I don't. So that's first thing. The second thing is, how does she leap from the fact that you are calling to say, hey, everything gone okay, didn't hear from you, to that's controlling? How does she do that?
And part of it is, I think, she kind of used to struggle a little bit with relationships with friends. She got a lot of ridicule when she was younger, and she's very paranoid of doing the wrong thing, and saying the wrong thing and being perceived as, not somebody that, somebody wants to hang out with. And so she's kind of brought this into it as far as kind of that's her reason why she's like that, because we, coddled her too much and when she was younger. And
so you did something wrong in her eyes, like so many young adults look at their parents and say, I just don't like the way you raised me.
Yeah, I didn't do that.
But keep paying for my college. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I would say this. I would tell her, I'm not trying to control your life, but I will contact you whenever I feel it's appropriate. Will she go, oh, okay, Father, I accept that? No, she won't. She won't like it.
No.
So what? See, parents are getting bullied. Parents are just getting bullied.
Yeah, I'm really, that's true. I mean, she's threatening us with, I'm just going to separate us. I'm not going to hang around you. Whatever.
Oh, whoa. You don't want to do, sweetheart, you don't want to do that because my money goes with me. It sounds a little bit like, I don't return your text because I don't want to.
Right.
It's like you're bugging me, Dad. If it were me, right. I'd probably say, honey, I'm going to expect some respect here. I'm going to do certain things that, as a dad, and even at age 22, I'm going to keep contact where I think is appropriate. And if you don't like it, if you refuse to take my calls, you screen the calls, you don't respond to texts, I got to start rethinking our financial arrangement here. Controlling is one of those words that has been stretched. I hear it a lot in marriage counseling. She's controlling. My wife is controlling. And as we explore the meaning of controlling, we find out that she's not being controlling. She's kind of asking him to do certain things that can be legitimately expected of a spouse, Come home before the sun rises. Fix something that's been broken for 8 months. In other words, it means I don't want you telling me about anything that I don't want to hear. And it wouldn't surprise me if Stephen's daughter's doing exactly that. I want to make my decisions, live as I wish, out of state, doing what I want, when I want, and I just don't like the idea that you still think that you have some supervision over me. Now, I can't know that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Now, here's the question I didn't answer with Stephen because we went in another direction. He said, am I being controlling? And the answer to that is, well, he really can't be. Because he has no leverage other than the financial, because she's out of sight, out of mind. So 24/7, she can do whatever she wants. And the only way he might get some inkling that she's not being responsible is if she lets him see her grades. And it's surprising how many kids don't let the parents see the grades until a semester or two later when they flunk out. So he can't really be controlling because he doesn't have the leverage. He can call and ask what she's doing, and it sounds like that's what bugs her. Don't ask me what I'm doing. Don't check up on me. Why would that be a problem? If a kid is away at school and a parent calls and says, so what'd you do last night? And the kid's attitude is, you don't need to know. I don't have to tell you. Quit trying to control me. That's a flag. The child is doing things that probably wouldn't be good. If, on the other hand, the child says, well, I went to church, and then after church I went out with my friends and got ice cream. Now, assuming that's true, wouldn't be a problem with telling your parents that, would it? But if it would be something that they're going to comment upon and you don't want to hear it, you ain't going to tell them. And you're going to hide behind the fact that it's their fault for asking. He said she's 22, which means she's, well, probably a senior, I would guess. Could be a junior. So, in fact, she's been away from home for 2 or 3 or 4 years. And mom and dad are covering whatever college expenses they're covering. And she just doesn't want them to know anything. The judgment they have to make. If they're going to say, well, she's independent, we're paying for her college because we think that'll give her a step up on finding a career, although it's amazing how many times it doesn't, then they will live with that. But if, on the other hand, they suspect there's some irresponsible or immoral behavior going on and they're paying for it, well, then they've got a decision to make. And the thing that makes me think I'm kind of on the right track with this is she said, in essence, if you keep doing this, if you keep asking me about what I'm doing and my whereabouts, I may just sever all contact with you. Now that's interesting, is it not? She's so upset that they're even asking these questions, which they have every right to ask, by the way, because they're paying for a college. She says, I'll cut the relationship off. See, that indicates something to me a little deeper. She's willing to do that. It's not just, I'm upset because you're asking me questions I don't want to answer. It's, get out of any kind of influence in my life. Interesting. And it's not unusual for college to bring this about in many, many kids, which is, I'm away from home. I'm free. I can do everything I want. I like this. And oh, by the way, Mom, Dad, financially, make it possible for me to do that. Dr. Ray. When I was in the evangelical world, a common tongue-in-cheek observation was, Dear Lord, use me however you need me to spread the gospel. Just don't send me to Africa. This is from C.S. Lewis here. And this is one that I absorb in my life, and in a brutal self-confession would admit that it's something that can unsettle me. Lewis says this: we are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us. We are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be. Example of this: parents, first time to be parents, are generally, understandably so, concerned that the baby be healthy, developmentally well. They would say, no, I certainly hope I don't have a child with handicaps, particularly significant ones. And then that happens. I have a friend who has a son who has a young boy, baby, infant, a little older now, severe developmental disability, severe, significant, 24-hour care. And I'm sure there's no way that they would view that as the best for them. But yet I've heard from so many parents that after they've had a child with significant challenges, they view it as a tremendous blessing. So we wonder, okay, Lord, please help me do your will, however that entails, whatever that entails. But it doesn't have a lot of pain attached to it, does it? Emotional pain, struggles. I got to admit, that prayer scares me. Lord, use me as you need me. Well, what if the way he needs me is tough? That unsettles me. I think any clear-thinking person, it would. We don't naturally cling to suffering. We may cling to it after it's thrust upon us. We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us. We don't doubt that. God's going to do the best for us. Just wondering how painful that best is going to be. Ooh, that hits close to home. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. I very much appreciate the company. Good Lord permitting, we will see you on Monday. We do an e-person. Walk with God. That's the best for you.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.